In World War II, some soldiers got legendary weapons, body armor, and firepower, but others were sent into battle with outdated gear that practically guaranteed death. Today, we're ranking every major WW2 infantry loadout, from worst to best. And trust me, some of these will genuinely surprise you.
Tier B. The struggling. Nations fighting with what they had. 9. Italy. Let's start at the bottom. And I say that with a certain amount of respect, because the Italian soldier didn't fail. His government did. The standard Italian infantryman in 1940 was handed the Carcano M91 rifle. Now, this was a weapon designed in 1891. By the time Italy entered the war, it was 50 years old. It fired a 6.5mm round that veterans described as underpowered, and the bolt-action mechanism was notoriously fiddly in field conditions. Mud, dust, cold, the Carcano complained about all of it. His helmet, the M33, was actually decent. Solid steel, reasonable coverage. But then you look at the rest of the kit. Cardboard-soled boots that dissolved in the North African sand. Wool uniforms sent to soldiers fighting in desert heat. Rations so bad that Italian POWs reportedly preferred captivity for the food. The Breda 30 light machine gun that supported these men was a masterclass in bad engineering. It required oiling each cartridge before firing to prevent jams. In the field, under fire. You cannot make this up. Italy had soldiers who wanted to fight. They were just handed tools that made it very hard to do so.
8. Japan. Japan's infantryman, the Hohei, was arguably the most psychologically conditioned soldier of the entire war. Bushido, sacrifice, absolute loyalty. But psychology doesn't stop a bullet, and Japan's industrial limitations showed up in the kit. The Arisaka Type 99 rifle was actually a solid weapon. Accurate, reliable, chambered in a respectable 7.7mm round. That's a genuine bright spot. But the rest of the picture gets complicated fast. Standard kit included a broadsword, yes, a literal sword, for officers and NCOs. Romantic, completely impractical. The standard helmet, the Type 90, was thin. Marines in the Pacific noted it offered poor protection against American firepower. Rations were the real killer. The standard issue of dried rice and pickled plum, Hinomaru Bento, was designed for short campaigns. In the jungles of Burma and the Pacific Islands, Japanese soldiers frequently starved. By 1944, malnutrition was standard across many units. There are documented cases of soldiers being issued wooden rifles for training because real ones weren't available. This wasn't a failure of courage. It was a failure of supply chain, industrial capacity, and a high command that planned for short wars and got a long one.
7. China. National Revolutionary Army.
China belongs in this conversation because somewhere between 8 and 20 million Chinese soldiers served in this war. A fact Western audiences still underappreciate. And the standard infantry loadout was patchwork. Chinese infantry carried whatever they could get. German supplied Kar 98K rifles in some elite units, Czech ZB-26 light machine guns and others. Japanese captured weapons mixed in with domestic copies of the Mauser. There was no standard loadout in any real sense. It depended on your unit, your warlord, your region, your connection to the supply line. Helmets were a luxury. Boots were sometimes absent entirely. Soldiers wrapped cloth around their feet. Rations were rice when available, and often not available. What kept the Chinese army in the fight for 8 years against Japan wasn't the equipment. It was, frankly, numbers and national will. But from a pure loadout perspective, it's hard to rank this anywhere but near the bottom. Not as a reflection of the soldiers, but of the material reality they faced. Tier A. The competent. Workable kits with real weaknesses. 6. France. France in 1940 had an army that looked better on paper than it performed in the field, and the loadout reflects that tension perfectly. The standard rifle was the Mass 36, a genuinely modern bolt-action introduced just 4 years before the German invasion. It was accurate, rugged, and well-made. France also had the FM 2429 light machine gun, one of the better LMGs of the war. So far, so good. But then it falls apart. The Adrian helmet, a legacy of WW1, was still in use. A thin, distinctive design that offered less protection than its contemporaries. French rations and personal kit were a mixed bag. Logistics were a known weakness, and the 1940 campaign exposed how quickly a solid kit becomes useless when your command structure collapses around you. The tragedy of the French soldier in 1940 wasn't the rifle in his hands. It was the plan, or lack of one, that determined how he was deployed. 5. Soviet Union. Now here's where it gets genuinely interesting, because the Soviet infantryman's experience changed dramatically across the war, and if we're talking 1941 versus 1944, we're almost talking about two different armies. In 1941, the standard Soviet soldier was equipped with the Mosin Nagant bolt-action rifle, a weapon from 1891 that, much like the Italian Carcano, was aging ungracefully. Early war kit was incomplete, poorly distributed, and in some units, weapons were shared. 2 men, 1 rifle. One waits for the other to fall. But here's the pivot. By 1943, and certainly by 1944, the Soviets had industrialized their war machine in ways that are still staggering to study. The PPSH-41 submachine gun, 900 rounds per minute, crude, simple, unstoppable, became the signature weapon. Soviet rifle squads were flooding the battlefield with firepower in ways German units couldn't match. The SSH-40 helmet was solid. Rations remained grim throughout, often supplemented by American Lend-Lease spam, which Soviet veterans later called Roosevelt sausage. The personal kit was stripped to bare essentials: greatcoat, boots, entrenching tool, and the will to keep moving west. The Soviets rank in the middle because the arc of improvement is genuinely impressive, but the human cost of that early inadequacy is almost incomprehensible.
Tier S, the Formidable, nations that got it right. 4. Germany. The German infantryman, the Lanzer, is probably the most studied soldier of the entire war, and for good reason. The standard German kit at the start of the war was arguably the most complete package any nation fielded. The Kar 98K bolt-action rifle was precision-engineered, not flashy, reliable, accurate. The kind of weapon that rewards discipline, which suited German infantry doctrine perfectly. Supporting weapons, the MG-34 and later the MG-42, were generational leaps in machine gun technology. The MG-42 fired 1,200 rounds per minute. Allied soldiers called it Hitler's buzzsaw. When you hear that sound in a film and your stomach drops, that's accurate. That's what it sounded like to the men on the receiving end. The Stahlhelm helmet is iconic for a reason. Excellent design, good protection, copied by nations around the world. Field kit included a well-designed gas mask, decent rations including hardtack and tinned meat, and quality leather boots, at least early in the war. Here's why Germany doesn't top this list. By 1943, resource strain began showing. Boot quality dropped. Rations thinned. The Eastern Front consumed material faster than the Reich could replace it. Late-war German soldiers were sometimes fighting in ersatz equipment, substitutes for substitutes. The standard of 1939 was not the standard of 1944. At peak, Germany's kit was world-class. Sustained? That's another question.
3. Great Britain and Commonwealth. The British Tommy is sometimes underrated in these conversations, and that's a mistake. The Lee Enfield No. 4 rifle is one of the great military rifles of all time, and I will die on that hill. Bolt action, yes, but with a 10-round magazine versus the standard 5 on the German or American equivalents, and a bolt throw so smooth and fast that trained soldiers could fire 20 aimed rounds per minute. The Mad Minute drill from WW1 was so ingrained, soldiers in WW2 still practiced it. German infantry in North Africa frequently reported thinking they were facing automatic fire. They weren't, just a well-trained British soldier with a good rifle. The Brody/Mark II helmet, evolutionary from WW1, good shrapnel protection, practical. The Bren light machine gun was arguably the most reliable LMG of the war, beloved by every Commonwealth soldier who carried it. And British rations, while famously uninspiring, hardtack, bully beef, tea, always the tea, were consistent. You knew what you were getting. Commonwealth editions, Australian, Canadian, Indian soldiers, often brought their own field adaptations that enhanced what was already a solid baseline kit. The British system wasn't glamorous, it was thorough. And thorough wins wars. 2. United States. General George Patton called it the greatest battle implement ever devised. He was talking about the M1 Garand, and he wasn't wrong. The American infantryman was the only soldier of the major powers issued a semi-automatic rifle as standard. 8 rounds, gas-operated, fire as fast as you can pull the trigger. Every other major nation's soldier was cycling a bolt between shots. The American GI was not. In any close-range engagement, that difference was profound. Beyond the Garand, the M1 carbine as a secondary weapon, the M1911 pistol with its hard-hitting 45 ACP round, the Bay AR automatic rifle for squad fire support.
American infantry squads had firepower that was the envy of every other army on the planet. The M1 helmet, the iconic steel pot, was a two-piece design, outer steel shell over an inner liner, that became the template for military helmets for the next 40 years. American combat boots were solid. Field rations, the K ration and C ration, were by WW2 standards actually quite good. Cigarettes, coffee, canned meat, crackers. Not a restaurant, but not starvation either. American logistics, the ability to resupply all of this consistently, is part of the loadout story too. Having good kit that actually arrives is half the battle, and America solved that problem better than almost anyone. So why not number one? Because one nation's kit, in one specific theater, was by the thinnest of margins, more complete.
1. Finland. Wait, Finland? You heard me. Here's the thing about ranking effectiveness per soldier rather than industrial scale. Finland changes the conversation entirely. And if you've studied the Winter War of 1939-40, this makes complete sense. The Finnish infantryman was equipped with the KP-31 Suomi submachine gun, a weapon so good that the Soviets literally copied it for their own PPSH-41. In close-range winter warfare, which is exactly the warfare Finland fought, it was devastating. The most in Nagant and Finnish hands was matched with some of the finest marksmen in history. Simo Häyhä, the White Death, used a Finnish-modified version to record over 500 confirmed sniper kills in less than 4 months. But the loadout goes deeper than the weapons. Finnish winter kit, white camouflage overalls, purpose-built winter boots, layered wool clothing, ski equipment was specifically designed for the environment. Soviet soldiers froze. Finnish soldiers moved. Finnish soldiers lived. Rations included rye bread, dried fish, hot coffee delivered by field kitchens to frontline positions, a morale and caloric factor that cannot be overstated when temperatures hit -40. Finnish soldiers were fed, warm, camouflaged, and fighting on familiar ground with equipment built for that ground. Against a Soviet force that outnumbered them by over 3-1, Finland held, and more than held. The kill-to-casualty ratio Finland achieved in the Winter War remains one of the most extraordinary in modern military history. The lesson? The best loadout isn't always the most expensive one. It's the one that was designed with that soldier in that environment for that fight in mind. Finland understood this, and they executed it almost perfectly.
If you liked this video, I'm sure you'll like this one too. Subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Our channel is small, so we are replying every comment below. Comment any suggestion for future videos. Thanks for watching.